Rain hammered the marble steps of Hawthorne Crest, so hard that the night seemed determined to erase everything happening beneath its windows. "Get out of this house." Vivian Locke's voice sliced through the storm as she shoved Amara Reed through the open doors. Amara's shoes slipped on the whetstone, but she caught the iron railing before falling. Behind her, the billionaire's fiancé stood beneath the entrance lights, perfectly dry in a silver gown, one hand still extended from the push. Amara turned, stunned. "Miss Locke, I did nothing wrong." Vivian smiled as if humiliation were entertainment. "You forgot your place. People like you do not question the woman who will own this estate." Then she grabbed Amara's coat from a servant and threw it into a puddle. What Vivian did not know was that 3 floors above, Julian Hawthorne stood behind his study window, watching every second. Before we continue, tell us your city and country, and subscribe as we race toward 100,000. Julian had returned 2 hours earlier than expected. His board meeting in Chicago had ended after a private message warned him that someone inside his charitable foundation was altering legal documents. Rather than announce his arrival, he entered through the underground garage and went straight to his study. He had planned to surprise Vivian. Instead, she surprised him. From the window, Julian watched Amara stand in the rain while the doors closed in her face. His hand tightened around the curtain. He knew Vivian could be cold. He had seen her dismiss waiters without looking at them and speak sharply to junior employees. But this was different. This was cruelty performed with confidence, the kind that came from believing consequences would never arrive. Julian reached for his phone, then stopped. Amara was not crying. She picked up her soaked coat, pressed it against her chest, and stared at the doors with an expression Julian could not understand. It was not fear or defeat. It was calculation. Amara had worked at Hawthorne Crest for 6 weeks. She was 29, quiet, observant, and far more educated than anyone in the household knew. 2 years earlier, she had been completing a degree in forensic accounting when her mother suffered a stroke. Tuition disappeared into hospital bills, and Amara accepted every job she could find. The position had seemed temporary. Clean rooms, serve dinners, send money home, return to school. Then, during her 3rd week, she noticed something strange. Vivian often entered Julian's private records room after midnight. At first, Amara told herself it was none of her concern. Vivian was engaged to the owner. But one night, Amara found shredded copies of donation ledgers inside a linen bag. The figures did not match the foundation's public reports. Millions assigned to medical clinics had been redirected through 3 consulting firms. All 3 companies shared the same postal address. Amara recognized the pattern immediately. Someone was hiding money. She began keeping notes, not because she wanted revenge, but because one cancelled clinic had been intended for Brookvale, where her mother lived. The facility would have provided affordable rehabilitation. Its loss had forced families like Amara's to travel hours for treatment. That afternoon, Amara discovered a sealed envelope beneath Vivian's desk while cleaning the private sitting room. She had not opened it. She had only read the words printed across the front. Hawthorne Foundation. Emergency ownership transfer. Vivian entered before Amara could replace it. For several seconds, neither woman moved. Then Vivian closed the door. "What did you read?" she asked. "Only the label." Vivian crossed the room slowly. "Give it to me." Amara handed over the envelope, but Vivian's eyes had changed. The polished socialite vanished, replaced by someone watchful and dangerous. "You have been wandering into places that do not concern you," Vivian said. "I was assigned to clean this room. You were assigned to polish surfaces, not study documents." Amara held her gaze. Then important documents should not be left on the floor. That answer sealed her fate. Vivian accused her of stealing a diamond bracelet, summoned 2 staff members, and ordered them to search Amara's locker. The bracelet was found beneath Amara's spare uniform. Amara knew she had been framed. She also knew arguing would make Vivian more reckless. So she remained calm while the household manager avoided her eyes, and Vivian called her dishonest and dangerous. Then Vivian announced that the police would not be involved if Amara left quietly. Sounded like mercy. It was fear. Vivian did not want officers asking questions inside the estate. Now, standing in the storm, Amara understood she had only minutes before the evidence in her locker disappeared. The notes hidden there were copies. The originals were somewhere Vivian would never search. Inside, Vivian turned from the doors and faced the staff. "Anyone who mentions this to Julian will join her outside," she said. "Is that understood?" No one answered. Vivian smiled. "Good." Upstairs, Julian heard every word through the security system linked to his study. He had installed the audio feature after a break-in years earlier but rarely used it. Tonight, each sentence struck him harder than the rain against the glass. He looked at the engagement photograph on his desk. Vivian stood beside him in white silk, her hand over his heart. He remembered how she comforted him after his father died and promised to protect the foundation his family built. Now he wondered whether he had ever known her. Julian left the study and moved toward the staircase, but movement below made him pause. Vivian was speaking privately with a man near the library. It was Marcus Vale, the foundation's chief financial officer. Marcus was not supposed to be there. Julian stepped into the shadows above the landing. "The maid saw the transfer envelope," Vivian whispered. Marcus's face tightened. "How much does she know?" "Enough to become a problem. Then throwing her out was foolish. She can talk. She has no proof." Thunder rolled over the estate. Marcus glanced toward the doors. "You had better be certain." Vivian lowered her voice. "By midnight, every file connecting us to those companies will be gone. Tomorrow, Julian signs the ownership amendment. After that, the foundation is ours." Julian felt the world narrow around him. Below, Vivian raised a glass of champagne as though she had already won. Outside, Amara crossed the flooded courtyard toward the staff gate. She was freezing, but she did not slow. Beneath the lining of her ruined coat, protected inside a plastic sleeve, was a black memory card. It contained photographs of every altered ledger she had found. She almost reached the gate when headlights swept across the rain. A black sedan stopped in front of her. The rear door opened. Amara froze when Julian Hawthorne stepped out without an umbrella. His eyes fixed on her soaked uniform and bruised wrist. "You are not leaving," he said. Amara stared at him. "Mr. Hawthorne." His expression was calm, but his voice carried a warning meant for someone inside. "I saw what she did to you." Then he looked up at the glowing windows of his home. "And before this night ends, I am going to learn why." Julian took off his overcoat and placed it around Amara's shoulders before guiding her toward the sedan. "I can walk," she said. "I know," he replied. "But you are shaking." Amara looked back at Hawthorne Crest. Somewhere inside, Vivian believed she had eliminated the only servant who had seen too much. Julian opened the rear door. "Get in. We are not going through the main entrance." Amara hesitated. "If she knows you saw her, she will destroy everything. That is why she must not know." He instructed the driver to circle toward the old carriage garage, a section of the estate rarely used except for maintenance storage. Inside the garage, Julian found blankets and switched on a portable heater. Amara removed her soaked shoes and stood near the warm air, gripping her coat. "What is inside that lining?" Julian asked. Her fingers tightened. "You kept touching the same place while we drove." Amara studied him very carefully. "Before I show you anything, I need to know whether you truly want the truth." Julian's expression hardened. "I just heard my fiancé discussing the theft of my foundation. That is only part of it." She opened a small tear in the coat's inner seam and removed the memory card. Julian stared at the object resting in her palm. "I photographed altered ledgers, false contracts, and payments sent to companies connected to Marcus Vale," she explained. I also found records showing that several community clinics were cancelled after their funds were redirected. Julian took the card but did not insert it into his phone. Why did you investigate this alone? Because no one here trusts a maid. Julian glanced away. You should have come to me. I considered it. Then I saw how completely you trusted Miss Locke. He had no answer. Amara wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. The bracelet in my locker was planted. She needed a reason to remove me before you returned. I know. No, Mr. Hawthorne. You know she is cruel. You do not yet know how prepared she is. Julian called his security director, Owen Cross, and ordered him to enter the estate through the Eastern Service Tunnel. Owen had worked for Julian's father and was one of the few people Vivian could not control. 20 minutes later, Owen arrived carrying a laptop and a dry uniform from the staff laundry. Amara changed in a storage room while Julian explained what he had overheard. Owen's face remained unreadable until Julian mentioned the ownership amendment. That document gives temporary control of the foundation to Vivian if you are declared medically unfit, Owen said. Julian stared at him. Why would I be declared unfit? Owen opened the laptop. That is what we need to discover. Amara returned wearing a charcoal housekeeping dress instead of the black uniform Vivian had chosen for the staff. She looked steadier now, though exhaustion remained in her eyes. Owen inserted the memory card. Hundreds of photographs appeared. The first files showed ordinary donation reports. Then came private ledgers with different totals, unsigned clinic closures, and invoices from companies that had never performed any work. Julian leaned closer as the amounts grew. $2 million, $4 million, $9 million. Each transfer carried Marcus Vale's authorization. But the final photograph was different. It showed a medical consent document bearing Julian's name. Across the top were the words, "Confidential Cognitive Evaluation." Julian read the page twice. I have never seen this. Amara pointed to the physician's signature. Dr. Lowell attended your engagement dinner last month. He is Vivian's family doctor. Owen zoomed in. The evaluation claimed Julian had suffered episodes of confusion, memory loss, and impaired judgment. It recommended immediate supervision of his financial decisions. They are building a medical case against you, Amara said. Julian's face went pale. Tomorrow's amendment is not about marriage. It is about control. A heavy silence filled the garage. Then the lights went out. Amara heard footsteps outside. Owen closed the laptop and drew a compact flashlight from his jacket. Julian moved in front of Amara as the garage door rattled. Someone cut the power, Owen whispered. A man's voice came through the darkness. Mr. Hawthorne. Miss Locke asked me to check the garage. It was Darius, one of Marcus's private guards. Julian stepped behind a storage cabinet. Do not answer. The side door opened. Darius entered silently with another man. Their flashlights swept across the floor and stopped on Amara's wet shoes. She is here, Darius said. Owen waited until both men moved deeper inside, then struck the first man's wrist and twisted the flashlight away. Julian shoved a metal cart across the floor, blocking the second guard's path. Amara grabbed the laptop and memory card as Owen forced the men against the wall. Who sent you? Julian demanded. Neither answered. Then a phone rang in Darius's pocket. Vivian's name appeared on the screen. Julian accepted the call without speaking. Did you find the maid? Vivian asked. Marcus says she may have taken something. Do not let her leave the property. Julian's eyes met Amara's. He changed his voice, making it lower. We found her coat. Search it, Vivian ordered. There is a memory card sewn inside. Amara's breath caught. Vivian knew. Julian ended the call and handed the guards to Owen. Lock them in the security room. Quietly. Owen nodded. What will you do? Julian looked toward the mansion. Give her exactly what she thinks she wants. Amara understood immediately. You will pretend you know nothing. And tomorrow, she will bring every conspirator into one room. They returned through the tunnel just before midnight. Amara entered the servants' corridor alone while Julian used the private elevator. Vivian was waiting in the kitchen. Her smile vanished when she saw Amara. "You," she whispered. Amara stopped several feet away. "Mr. Hawthorne brought me back." For the first time that night, fear broke through Vivian's perfect expression. Then Julian's voice sounded behind her. "Is there something you forgot to tell me, Vivian?" Vivian turned so quickly that the crystal glass in her hand struck the counter. "Julian," she said, forcing a smile. "I thought you were upstairs." "I was." His gaze shifted to Amara, then back to Vivian. "Why was she outside in the storm?" Vivian recovered almost instantly. "She stole from me. I was protecting this house." Amara remained silent. Julian stepped closer. "And the two men searching the carriage garage? Were they protecting the house too?" The color left Vivian's face. Before she could answer, Marcus Vale entered through the dining hall. His expensive suit was damp at the shoulders, and his eyes went directly to Amara. "Mr. Hawthorne," he said, "there has been a misunderstanding." Julian smiled without warmth. "Excellent. Then tomorrow's meeting should clear everything up." Marcus and Vivian exchanged a quick glance. Julian pretended not to notice. He told Amara to return to the staff wing and ordered Vivian to restore her position until the matter was reviewed. The command humiliated Vivian more than any accusation could have. Yet she nodded sweetly, waiting until Julian left before leaning toward Amara. "You think he saved you," she whispered. "By tomorrow evening, he will not even control his own name." Amara met her stare. "Then tomorrow may surprise both of us." That night no one slept. Owen copied the memory card onto 3 encrypted drives. One went into Julian's private safe. Another was sent to an attorney outside the state. Amara carried the third beneath the sole of her shoe. At 7 the next morning, black cars began arriving at Hawthorne Crest. Foundation trustees, legal advisors, Marcus's accountants, and Dr. Lowell entered the glass conference hall overlooking the gardens. Vivian wore a white suit, as if she were attending a coronation rather than a meeting. Julian arrived last. Amara watched from the serving station, dressed again as a maid. Vivian had insisted on it, hoping the uniform would remind everyone who held power. Marcus placed the ownership amendment before Julian. "This is a temporary safeguard," he explained. "Recent concerns about your health require continuity." Dr. Lowell opened a folder. "Mr. Hawthorne has displayed troubling symptoms." Julian looked around the table. "Such as memory disruption, impulsive decisions, and paranoia." Vivian touched Julian's arm. "I only want to protect you." Amara nearly flinched at the tenderness in her voice. Julian picked up the pen. Across the room, Amara saw Marcus relax. Then Julian dropped the pen onto the document. "I cannot sign this." Vivian's smile tightened. "Why not?" "Because I forgot how." A few trustees shifted uneasily. Julian pressed his fingers to his temple. "Perhaps Dr. Lowell is right. Perhaps I should be evaluated immediately." Vivian glanced at Marcus. This was not the resistance they expected. Dr. Lowell stood. "I have medication that may calm you." He removed a small case from his bag. Amara saw Vivian's hand slide beneath the table and tap her phone once. Signal. Seconds later, the conference doors locked automatically. Owen's voice came through Amara's earpiece. "Security system has been overridden. Someone is blocking my access." Dr. Lowell filled a syringe. Julian stared at it. "What is that?" "A mild sedative." Amara stepped forward. "Do not let him inject you." Every face turned toward her. Vivian rose. "Get this servant out." Amara lifted a sealed pharmacy record. "That drug is not a mild sedative. In the dosage he prepared, it can cause severe confusion and temporary memory loss." Dr. Lowell's hand trembled. Marcus stood as well. This is absurd. No, Amara said. What is absurd is billing a dead clinic for $3 million. She placed copies of the ledgers on the table. The room erupted. Vivian lunged for the papers, but Julian caught her wrist. You knew, she gasped. I knew enough to let you bring everyone together. The locked doors suddenly opened. Owen entered with 2 investigators and Julian's attorney. Marcus backed toward the windows. Then one investigator held up his phone. We have a live transfer moving from the foundation account right now. Marcus's expression shattered. Vivian looked at him. You said the money was secure. Her words silenced the room. Julian released her wrist slowly. You just confessed, he said. Vivian stared at the trustees, searching for an escape. Then her eyes settled on Amara. With a cry of rage, she grabbed the syringe from Dr. Lowell and rushed toward her. Amara moved aside, but Vivian caught her uniform sleeve and pulled her against the table. The syringe rose between them. Before its needle touched Amara, Julian seized Vivian from behind. The syringe fell and shattered across the marble floor. Yet Marcus used the chaos to reach the emergency exit. He tore open the door, carrying the only folder that could reveal who had truly planned everything from the very beginning. Marcus ran through the emergency exit and into the east garden, clutching the folder. Beneath his arm, rain still covered the stone paths, turning every step into a risk. Owen shouted for the investigators to follow, but Julian was already moving. Amara pulled free from Vivian and ran after him. Marcus reached the lower terrace, where a black car waited with its engine running. He yanked open the rear door, but the driver stepped out and raised both hands. It was Julian's attorney. There is nowhere left to go, the attorney said. Marcus spun around. Julian stood at the top of the steps, soaked by the rain, with Amara beside him. Investigators closed in from both sides. Marcus looked at Vivian, who had followed them into the garden. You promised me immunity, he shouted. Vivian stopped. Julian's eyes sharpened. Immunity from what? Marcus laughed bitterly. She planned all of it. The false medical reports, the clinic transfers, the amendment. I moved the money, but she chose the targets. Vivian's face hardened. He is lying. Marcus opened the folder and threw several documents across the wet terrace. One page stopped at Amara's feet. He picked it up. It contained emails between Vivian and Dr. Lowell, including instructions to create symptoms of confusion using controlled medication hidden in Julian's evening tea. Julian read the message over Amara's shoulder. The betrayal finally struck deeper than anger. You were going to poison me slowly, he said. Vivian backed away. I was trying to protect our future. Our future never existed. The investigators arrested Marcus, Dr. Lowell, and Vivian before noon. As Vivian was led through the entrance hall, every servant stood silently. She looked toward Amara, expecting triumph. Amara offered none. She only said, "No one is beneath consequence." Weeks later, the stolen funds were recovered from offshore accounts. The cancelled Brookvale Clinic reopened under independent supervision, and every employee who had remained silent out of fear received protection during the investigation. Julian dismissed the household manager for helping conceal Vivian's abuse. He also created a confidential reporting system that no executive or family member could override. Then he asked Amara to meet him in the foundation office. A new nameplate rested on the desk. Amara Reed, Director of Financial Integrity. She stared at it. I am not qualified for this title yet. Julian placed a university enrollment letter beside it. Your position begins after you finish your degree. Until then, the foundation will sponsor your education, and you will work as a paid investigator under the new board. Amara looked at him carefully. Is this because you feel guilty? No, Julian said. Guilt opened my eyes. Your courage earned the opportunity. Her mother later became one of the first patients treated at the restored clinic. On opening day, Julian stood in the crowd while Amara cut the ribbon. Thunder sounded in the distance, but this time no one stood alone in the rain. The staff later chose Amara to speak at the Foundation's annual dinner. She did not describe herself as a victim. She spoke about systems that reward silence and people who mistake obedience for loyalty. When she finished, even the trustees who had doubted her rose to their feet. Julian remained standing the longest. Julian remembered the woman he had watched from the window, soaked and discarded, yet still protecting the truth. Amara remembered the man who had finally stepped away from the glass and chosen to see. And Hawthorne Crest changed forever, not because a billionaire saved a maid, but because the maid refused to let wealth bury justice.